Okay, cool. Welcome to episode 2 of our investing channel. In this episode, I really want to focus on scams and how not to lose your money because in the first episode, we talked about you need to have money to invest. Don't invest with money you don't have. Don't try to take out debts to invest. That's just gambling. Make sure you pay off whatever debts you have, college debts, card loan, house mortgage, and think really carefully about why you want to invest in order to make sure that your investment priorities are right. So last time we talked about cash accounts and we talked about how to make sure that you have really liquid assets like a checking account with a 4% interest rate, which is really good. And now what I want to focus on is on making sure you don't lose the money that you do have. You keep some money in cash for a rainy day fund or whatever. Make sure that you're not losing that money. Before you even think about any investments, always be careful about whatever investments that you might be thinking about. There are tons of bad ones out there. I see scams every single day by all different kinds of methods. You'll get texts, you'll get emails, you'll get phone calls, you'll get random people who walk up to you with scams and stuff like that. So I want to cover a couple of really quick, important, common schemes. There are pyramid and Ponzi schemes, which are basically ones where the people at the top are making the most money, and they basically tell you, oh, well, this is specifically for pyramid schemes, okay? It's pyramid shaped. Just think about that when you think of, I can't even spell pyramid, but think about like a pyramid, and that's exactly how the scheme looks like. The people at the top are making all the money, and they tell everybody below them, oh, you have to go and recruit more people, and they have to pay to be part of this business opportunity or whatever. And so then everybody is paying, but then the people at the very bottom are the ones who get wrecked because they don't get any of the benefits and all the money that they're paying in goes up to the people at the top. So that's the pyramid scheme. Now, Ponzi scheme is basically when you tell people, ooh, yeah, like I'm gonna make you so much money, and all you have to do is just give me a whole bunch of your money, and then I'll keep giving you back X percent. But they pretend like they're giving you back more money than you gave them, when in reality, they're just giving you back a piece of the money you originally gave them. So, what do I mean by that? Let's say I start with $100, okay? So I give you $100 and you say, ooh, I'm going to invest this money in something. But actually, you're going to invest that money in, I don't know, McDonald's or something because you love chicken nuggets. So then you go buy $100 worth of chicken nuggets and then you think, oh, crap, I can't pay this guy back. Oh, I'll give him $10 from my pocket and I'll just tell him, ooh, look, you made 10% of your money back. So then the person who bought all the chicken nuggets gives the other person $10 back, and then the person who gets $10 thinks, wow, this is great. This investment just grew 10% in just whatever amount of time, maybe a day or something. So then they think, wow, if it keeps growing 10%, then let's see, $100 times 1.1, that's a 10% growth rate. And let's say 30 days because, you gave them back $10 in one day. So then they would think, whoa, I have something like a 1,744% return rate. So that means that I could have $1,700 by the end of the month if this person gives me 10% back every single time. So you think that you're getting a lot of money back, but you're really just getting scammed. You're just getting a tiny bit of what you gave them back. So then there's also the gift card scam. This one's really common. I know several people who have fallen for this. It's where basically somebody will call you and tell you there's something really important and terrible happening, like, oh, you owe us a lot of money. Or it's a CEO who says, hey, like I need you to run this really urgent task for me. And usually it's somebody who's really important or something that seems really scary that's happening to pressure the person not to think too hard and to just go out to the store, get a whole bunch of gift cards, and then give it to the scammer. Don't fall for this one. Nobody usually asks you for gift cards for random purposes, and make sure you call the person back, email the person back through your own separate way, not through however way they reached out to you. So if they emailed you from a different email, be skeptical about that. Try to use the email that you have on file for them. If they call you from a different number or text you from a different number, try to call back or text back on the number that you have for them. So make sure you verify. Job scams are really common nowadays, especially with Gen Z. They tend to struggle with finding employment. And so there are these job scams that come out that basically say something like, oh, yeah, you're a great person for this opportunity. You just have to pay us this amount of application fee or initiation fee, whatever. you want to make sure that these are legitimate, vet them. Most of the time, random people aren't just going to reach out to you through text. And if they do, you want to make sure that they actually came from a legitimate source, like from LinkedIn, where you actually applied to them and things like that. And then, of course, there's also this classic age-old one, which is friends or family borrowing money. So this has happened to me where I befriended somebody who I used to go to his sandwich, not his sandwich shop, but used to work at this sandwich shop that I would go to. And I would get sandwiches from this dude. Super nice guy. He used to save the last clam chowder for me every once in a while. I got to know him as a friend. He started asking me for money at some point, and I loaned some out to him. I never saw a dime of that back. Now, I don't feel bad about it because it was an amount of money that was not that much to me, but it could have been a lot of money to other people. And he did continuously ask me for money, but at some point I cut him off and I said, no, I'm not going to have this person exploit me anymore. So you do have to be careful about that. Friends and family borrowing money. I'd say 9 out of 10 times, just assume that the money will never, ever come back to you. Just give it to them out of generosity. But if you don't feel like you have that financial capability, then don't lend them at all. Just tell them, hey, unfortunately, I'm not financially able to do that right now. So make sure you take a step back and pause if people want your money, especially if they try to push your emotions. If it's a scam, you need to think carefully. Are you going to be okay with losing that much money? If I give somebody $100, how much Chipotle could I buy with that instead? Are you going to make an emotional decision or a rational one? If the CEO is actually pressuring you, hey, I need you to get this thing done right now, go out, buy those gift cards, you got to think about it. What will it do if you just spend an extra 30 seconds to send an email and to reconfirm with that person, or to call them up and say, hey, I just wanted to make sure that this is actually coming from you. I want to make sure that this is not a scam and that our business isn't getting our money stolen from some third party. And how do you know the person contacting you? Do you really trust them? If it's strangers, 9 out of 10 times, watch out. But even if it does seem like it's maybe somebody within a company or even somebody who's a friend of a family or something, you still want to be careful, because at the end of the day, scammers exploit trust. So you have to ask yourself, do you trust that person with your laptop? Because 9 out of 10 times, it's not going to be a good idea to give random people money or random people information, even if there's some level of established trust. And if you do want to do that, you need to make sure that there's at least some sort of written contract, some sort of agreement. That way, there's a way for you to claw back your money in case that things go awry. I mean, look, I've personally been scammed before, which is why I think this is a really important thing to talk about. I think every single human being on earth is susceptible to one scam or another in various forms. Every time you go on vacation to another country, if you do, then there are tons of YouTube videos out there that talk about scams and how people will upcharge you on taxis, on hotel fees, on all these different kinds of random things that you wouldn't think that you would typically pay for, which, spoiler alert, you shouldn't. And then, like there are all these different kinds of scams that I've fallen for, like a toll scam. So these were really suspicious only after I'd already paid it, because the account that I was paying to was kind of weird. But when I was first engaged with the scammer, it was a text that seemed legitimate, and they seemed to know that I was from a certain state, even though I live in a different state. So I thought that it was because I had just visited that state and because, my information maybe wasn't totally up to date, so maybe I owed something for a certain purpose. So I said, okay, it's a small amount anyway, so I'm okay with losing this money. And that's why I ended up paying that. But unfortunately, I did give a little bit of money to some scammers in that case. And then, of course, there's those other scams that are like, paying $20 for sunglasses that you get for $3 on Amazon. That is just something I threw in there because I went to Colorado one time and I went to a grocery store and bought sunglasses for $20. And the lens popped out, I think, within 5 minutes of purchasing them. So I'm still a little bit salty about that. Anyway, moving on. Bad investments and poor timing are both some of the worst things and painful lessons that you'll learn when you're doing investments. I personally tried starting up my own company, and I put about 50 grand into a mental health app for depression. It was using machine learning to identify the most important attributes of a person's lifestyle, which could help alleviate the depression. And it personally worked. For me, I didn't need to take Wellbutrin anymore. If you want to hear more about that, you can leave a comment. But my main takeaway here is that people need to find the right product market fit if they want to invest in a specific business. I even thought about putting 50K into some franchise business, and I had some more experienced folks talk me out of that because it was in bad location. I'd have to pay a lot of real estate tax, and the business costs and expenses seemed like really high risk for the amount of management and time that I would have to invest into it. A lot of people would rather pay for quick fixes than long-term solutions, and that is not the way to go about it, both for mental health, like the app I built, but also for investments. When you want to make money, don't think about making money fast. You got to think about sustainability. If you want to make money fast, then that's no different than playing some kind of a lottery or gambling at a casino. Yeah, sure, you can make money within a night, 50% earnings. If you take that to an investment firm, they'd say, wow, 50% in one day. That's not an investment, that's gambling. It doesn't matter whether you're talking about stocks, crypto, real estate, some sort of materials, or some sort of casino. It doesn't matter. It's gambling if you're making a lot of money fast. That's just 99% of the time how it is. So if you do a little bit of prevention, then you could potentially protect the money that you do have significantly. And that's why I wanted to tie all this back into scams, because even though you may not be making any money by focusing on scam prevention, you're at least saving the money that you do have. If you can't afford to lose $1,000, don't even think about the investments. Just think about avoiding giving it to random people and avoid putting it on random dumb stocks that a lot of people are trying to trick you into buying so that they can take all the money and leave you as the bag holder, which is the person who loses a lot of money on the stock investment. These are called pump and dumps. So be careful about people who talk too much about some stock, because there are a lot of people out there who just want to hype up the stock so that the price goes up really high when everybody bought it, and then they'll take the money and run, meaning the stock drops like crazy, you lose, most of the people lose, and only they make money. An ounce of prevention is worth a pound of cure. Sun Tzu probably. No, not actually. It's just a common meme to attribute everything to Sun Tzu. But anyway, so an ounce of prevention, I think, is both suitable for a lot of things. Bad investments and taking care of your health. I'm not going to dive too much deeper into that because I think that's starting to get pretty tangential. If you want me to talk more about that, you can leave a comment and let me know. I'll dive into that separately. But moving on to the actual title that this video will have, I did lose about 50 to 100,000 in 24 hours by options trading. Options are really high risk. I'm not going to go into the details right now, but my point is I am an experienced trader. I've been trading for over 10 years now. So I've done the whole losing a bunch of money, gaining a bunch of money. These kinds of amounts of money are amounts that only should be risked if you can walk away from it the next day and kind of shrug it off. I remember when I first started trading, I made $100 in a day, and I was so happy because I was a broke college student. And to me, $100 in one day, that was massive. That was like 6 days of Chipotle. But nowadays, if I lose a couple thousand on the market in a given day, I'm okay, because that's my risk portfolio. Let's say I have a strategy that helps me win 70% of the time, and let's say I'm betting 20 or 30% of my money, right? Let's say I'm betting like $10,000 or $20,000. And I use that word very specifically, bet, because a lot of this is basically gambling. And this is another example of something that I think you need to stay away from or be very careful of. Lots of people out there are going to talk about options trading, get some calls, get some puts, bet on the stock, bet against the stock. But if you don't know what you're doing, you are doing nothing more than flipping a coin and gambling. So you have to be careful with things like this. There's also this whole thing about dark pool trading abuse, which is what these really big fancy financial companies will do. So you do want to be very careful about options trading. I'd say you probably need to study it at least 6 months, maybe a year or more in order to get a good understanding of what options even are and what the risks associated with that are. But my main takeaway for any introductory trader is do not ever touch options for at least the first 3 to 5 years that you plan to do any kind of investment, because it's just gambling. You can lose everything and you could be left with literally zero, literally. So instead, should we just follow Warren Buffett? Well, it's not a bad idea. He's one of the best investors in the world, right? So what if you just copy his trades and stuff like that? But here's the problem. He's a billionaire. So it's way harder for him to make big returns on investments because he's talking about moving billions and billions of dollars at one time. Think about trying to move a ton of bricks. How easy is it to move one brick? I can put it in my car. I could maybe even put it in a big pocket if I have a giant jacket. I could, put it in a chair. I could put it in my closet. Moving one brick is so much easier than moving a whole ton of bricks. So Warren Buffett is going to need things like massive trucks, to continue this analogy, and he's going to need entire factories and things like that. And he's going to have to plan out the route really carefully. But people like us who have very little amounts of money, or in other words, very low volume or low amounts of capital, we don't necessarily have to do exactly the same as Warren Buffett. He doesn't take on as much risk because he wants more consistent returns on his money. So he is going to go to the same old strategies time and time again. And not to say that he's not a brilliant investor. He's absolutely a really great investor. He chooses really good value stocks and gets them at great prices. What I'm saying is we can try that similar strategy, but we can actually be a little bit more risky with some of the stocks that we choose if we have a lot of information about it. Like, let's say if we work in tech or if we work in a specific kind of area, then we're more of an expert in those things. So we can invest with those small amounts of money and make way better returns because we're kind of like an ant. An ant can lift way more than their weight, but the bigger and bigger a creature gets, the harder it is to lift, let's say, 2 or 3 times their weight. Humans can't usually lift 2 times their weight. That's very difficult for most people. And so similarly, you want to try to be more aggressive when you have less capital in some cases. Again, I say in some cases because you want to make sure that wherever you're taking your risks, you're fully willing to lose every cent that you have if you go for the most aggressive strategies. As an options trader myself, I'm okay with losing all the money that I put into an options trade. 100% okay with that. Now, it's an aggressive strategy, but I could potentially make a lot of money. And if I win more than I lose, then I end up making a decent amount there. But you have to make sure that your risk portfolio is reasonable. I would say stay away from that. Stay away from that craziness, the casino, the options trading. But you don't have to necessarily just follow Warren Buffett. You can look at different kinds of managed funds. So we talked last time about 401ks, IRAs, and all these different kinds of things that are investment groups that basically manage a whole bunch of stocks for you. And they call this a certain kind of fund. So my dad actually asked me about something called the Fidelity Contra Fund. This is something that he personally has in his retirement portfolio, if I remember correctly. Now, this is just one example, but it's basically a collection of lots of different stocks. And what you'll see is that it comprises of these stocks as 60% of the total portfolio. See, 58% right here is just these 10 stocks. And you'll have all different kinds of funds like this that are collections of stocks. Now, what I'm arguing is that it's usually better for you as somebody who might not know a lot about these stocks to just trust these funds and to put your money in the hands of experts and financial advisors who have degrees and who have studied this stuff and who get paid to do this professionally. Because it's way riskier for you to go and try to invest individually in one of these stocks. But guess what? Oh crap, you didn't read the news yesterday and now today the stock drops like 10%. Well, other people did, and that's why they didn't invest as much into that stock and why they spread the risk out across a whole bunch of stuff. So you see, these managed funds, they actually perform relatively well and they can potentially be a good idea. But you want to think about whether or not you're willing to take that risk on just a small collection of stocks versus larger groups of stocks. Last time we talked about just investing in the S&P 500 and how most hedge fund managers can't even beat the S&P 500 historically. The S&P 500 again is just the collection of 500 biggest stocks on the US stock market. And this particular index is really great because all you have to do is just keep putting money on that year over year. And historically, statistically, you get about 7 to 10% of your money growing on a yearly basis. That's even better than the 4% interest rate that you get from most of the most competitive checking account interest rates. And it's also better, definitely better than some of those old legacy banking companies who don't even give you 1% on interest rate. They give you something like 0.01% or something, literally pennies on the dollar. So S&P 500, these different kinds of funds within your 401k or your different kinds of managed funds, these are actually relatively good and okay and safe. These are things that you want to consider when you especially don't have a lot of experience. Now, I'm going to stop this video here, but next time we're probably going to start diving more into some of the math for personal funds and understand why would you want to go and invest on your own? What are some opportunities that you could use money to grow faster than these individual firms in, and what are the risks associated? We did touch on some of the risks here, talking about how you might not know information that other people do, or you might not be able to watch the markets as frequently as other people do. So again, if you don't feel like you want to do the work, learn about stuff yourself, then just go ahead, use managed funds. You can copy Warren Buffett or something, do the S&P 500 strategy. But those are usually safer, and they will not necessarily make you a lot of money comparatively to a more aggressive personalized strategy. But they are also probably not going to lose you all your money. Again, all of this is probability. You could lose all your money tomorrow. Just try to see what makes sense for your risk profile. All right, thank you so much, and I hope to catch you next time. Make sure to like and subscribe.